Hi everyone, very good morning, and I welcome you all to the next session in Java. So far we have covered some of the keywords in Java programming language, and we have discussed about what are the different keywords in Java, and then we have started discussing about this keyword, static keyword, final, public, private, and protected, and we have completed up to protected in the last session, and so in today's session we are going to cover about the super keyword in Java. So after the completion of super keyword in Java, we are going to see the next topic in Java programming language. So coming to the super keyword, so here what this super keyword will do is, the super keyword is used to access the immediate parent class instance variables, immediate parent class methods, and immediate parent class constructors. So we have seen the things about this keyword. So while discussing about this keyword, we have seen about the current class. So if you want to access the instance variables of the current class, if you want to access the methods of a current class, if you want to access the constructors of a current class, then we go for this keyword in Java. I'm sorry. So as this keyword is used to access current class, instance variables, methods, and constructors, super keyword is used to access the superclass variables, superclass methods, and superclass constructors. So let us see each and everything in detail. So the super keyword, right? The super keyword can be used in front of variables, can be used in front of not in front of variables and in front of methods. I'm sorry. The super keyword, how, let us see by using a program, let us see how we can access the superclass variables and superclass methods and superclass constructors by using a super keyword. See here, for example, here I have a variable called as int a equal to 10. I have variable int a equal to 10, and this method is going to print the variable a on the output screen. And similarly, in class B also, I have a variable a equal to 20, and this method is going to print the value of a on the output screen, right? And here let us consider. So see what I have done here. I have defined two classes, class A and class B, where class B is inherited from A. You can see here I have written class B extends A, which means I have inherited the properties of class A into class B. And there is one more class called as C. And then in class A, I have declared a variable integer A, which is having the value of 10. And there is one method M, which will print the value of A on the output screen. So it will print the value of A on the output screen. Similarly, B is also having the variable A, where the value of variable is 20. And in B also we have a method M, and this method M is going to print the value of A on the output screen. And the class C has main method in Java, and in this main method I have created an object for class B, and the name of object is obj. And with this obj I am going to call the method M. So now my question is whether this method M is going to print 10 on the output screen or 20 on the output screen. The answer for this question is it is going to print 20 on the output screen, right? It is going to print 20 on the output screen. So let us see, let us compile and save the code. See here, let us save and let us compile the code first. Just a second. So I think we have done one mistake at line number 11. We have missed the semicolon. Okay. So now just compile the code. So there are no errors. No errors. Now I am running the code. So if I run the code, as I said earlier, it has printed 20 on the output screen. So here what happened is I just created an object for B. I called obj.m. Whenever the obj.m has been called, it will start executing the method m, which was present in class B, because obj is the object of class B. So when the method m is executed, it's going to print the value of a. So first it will search whether the a is present in class B or not. If a is present in class B, then this particular statement is going to print the value of a which was present in class B. For example, if there is no a here, then obviously it will, let us see what will happen if there is no variable a inside class B. So if there is no variable inside class B, what will be the output of this code? See here, now if there is no a in class B, then the output of this code will be 10, because see here, if obj.m was called, the m method which was present in class B will start executing. So inside the method m, the first statement was system.out.println a. So which means we are trying to print the value of a. So now the compiler will search us whether there is a variable a inside class B or not. If there is variable a inside class B, then the value of that variable will be printed on the output screen. If there is no variable a, if you observe this class, there is no variable a here, then what the compiler will do is, the compiler will start searching in the superclass. We have given extends a, which means if there is no variable a here, then compiler is going to search for the variable a inside class A. Now the control will shift to the instance variable part of the class A. So inside the instance variable part of the class A, there is a variable a whose value is 10. That's why it has printed the value of 10. Previously, here we have declared int a equal to 20. Previously, we have declared here int a equal to 20. That's why whenever the compiler searches for the variable a, it has found something int a equal to 20. That's why it has printed 20 on the output screen. But but in this code, we have deleted this int a equal to 20. So compiler will start searching in class B. If there is no variable a inside class B, then it is going to search in class A. Why it is searching in the class A? In the sense, we have inherited class A into class B. So if there is nothing in class B, it is going to search in class A. And in class A, we have variable a whose value is 10. That's why it has printed the value of 10 on the output screen. Right? So let us see. Let us declare the variable int a equal to 20. So if I compile and run the code, we get 20 as an output, because we are trying to access the method m present in class B. If we access the method m present in class B, it is going to print the value of a, where the value of a is 20 inside B. Now what I want to do is, I want to print both the values. I want to print both the values 10 and 20. That is, I want to print the value of a inside class B. At the same time, I want to print the value of a inside class A. So what I have to do here is, I need to take one more system.out.println statement. Here, instead of simply giving a, I am going to give super.a. When the compiler encounters a, it will search us in the instance variables. If it is not found here, it will search us in the superclass. But when I give super.a, immediately it does not go for the instance variable. It will directly go to the superclass. So the superclass for class B is class A. So inside A, it is going to search for variable A, right? So the first statement, first it will search here. If it is found here, it will print the output. If it is not found here, it will go for A. So it is the first option. It is the second option for the first statement. For especially for the second statement inside method M, we have directly called super.a, which means we want to print the variable A which was present in the super class of the present class. The super class of the present class is class A, and we want to print the variable A inside class A. So obviously the output of the first statement will be 20 and the output of the second statement will be 10. Let us verify the output here. I'm compiling the code and I am going to run the code. See here, but first it has printed 20 and then it has printed 10, right? So you can see here, by the usage of the super keyword, we have accessed the super class instance variables. That is the first use of the super keyword. You can see that in the PPT. You can see it in the PPT. So to refer the instance variables of an immediate parent class, instance variables can be referred. For example, what the immediate parent class means, for example, there is one more class here, some class Z, and inside the class Z also there is variable A. Inside class Z also there is variable A where the value is 30, and A extends Z, which means, see what I have done. There is a class Z, A, class B, and class C. Z is inherited into A is inherited into B, and C contains main method. Here the A value is 30, here the A value is 10, and here the A value is 20. From the object of B, I have tried to access, see here, from the object of B, I have tried to access the method M. So method M is going to print the value of A and the super.A, which means the super class for class B is class A, which means there are two super classes for class B. A is a super class and Z is a super class, but the immediate super class is class A. That is the meaning of this immediate statement. So the super keyword is used to print the instance variables of the immediate parent class, and then it is used to refer the method of an immediate parent class. So how, let us see how we can refer the method of immediate parent class. See here, if I call super.m instead of this statement, right, if I call super.m, let us see what will happen. I'm removing this Z, don't get confused, I'm removing this one. See here, there are two classes, A and B. B is inherited from A, and A contains a variable whose value is 10, and there exists an M which will print this value 10 on the output screen. And in B also there is a variable A and whose value is 20, and there is method M which is going to print the value of A. At the same time, inside the method M, we have written a statement called as super.m. Right? Now what will happen is, it will print the value of A. That means it will print 20 on the output screen. And at the same time, when we call super.m, we are trying to call the method M which was present in the super class. So the super class for class B is class A. So inside A, if there is a method M, the compiler is going to execute that method. So if you execute this method, it is going to print the value of A, which means it is going to print the value of A which is inside class A. So the output will be 20 and 10. So let us save and compile the code. So if I compile the code, I'm getting the output 20. So you can see here, from the subclass, right, from the subclass method M, we are going to access the superclass method M by using the keyword called as super keyword. Previously, from the subclass method M, we try to access the instance variable of the superclass. So super keyword can be used to access instance variable of the parent class. Super keyword can be used to access the methods of the parent class. And at the same time, super keyword is used to access the constructor of the parent class. See here, it is already covered. Let us make it as a constructor. If we want to be it as a constructor, let us make it as a constructor. A. So if you don't write any return type and if the class name and method name both are same, then it is called as constructor, right? See here. Let us use the super keyword here, right? If I use the super keyword here and at the same time, during the execution of constructors, there is no need to call the constructor again. It will be executed automatically. Right, see here. There is class A and inside class A, there is constructor A, and there is class B and inside class B, there is constructor B. And then there is class C. Inside we have created an object obj for class B. So when the object is created for class B, then the constructor will get executed. When the constructor is getting executed, the first statement inside the constructor will be super keyword. Whether we write it or not, it will be the first keyword inside the constructor. When the super keyword was encountered by the compiler, it is going to execute the superclass constructor. After the execution of superclass constructor is completed, it will execute the remaining lines of the present class constructor. So if the superclass constructor was executed, then 10 will be the output. And if the remaining lines of the subclass were executed, 20 will be the output. See here. There are no errors and the output will be 1020 because superclass is executed first, superclass constructor is executed first, followed by the subclass constructor. So this is how we can make use of super keyword in 3 ways. From the subclass, if you want to access the parent class variables. From the subclass, if you want to access the parent class methods. From the subclass, if you want to access the parent class constructors, we can go for super keyword, right? And this is all about the keywords. And let us refer the keywords again. So till now, we have studied about these following keywords in detail. We have covered this keyword, current class variables, current class methods, current class constructors. Static keyword, if you want to bring something into the RAM directly without creating an object, just declare it with a static keyword. Final keyword, so final keyword can be used before a variable, before a method, before a class. If the final keyword was used before a variable, the value of that variable will become constant. If the final keyword was used before a method, we cannot override method. That is, method overriding can be prevented by using final keyword before a method. If you use this final keyword before a class, then we can prevent that class from inheritance. So no one can inherit that class when it was declared with final. And at the same time, we have seen about public, private, protected in the last class. If we define anything as public, it can be accessed everywhere in the program. If we define anything as private, it can be accessed only in that particular class. We cannot access anywhere in the program. If you define something as protected, it can be accessed in the class and in the subclass, and outside of that, apart from that subclass, no one can access that protected variable. And finally, in today's session, we have seen about the super keyword. If we want to access the superclass variables, superclass methods, and superclass constructors, then we can go for super keyword, right? So here, let us see. So let us see some of the basics in Java after the completion of keywords. Under this basics, I want to cover the data types, the control statements, operators, precedence rules and associativity, and comment lines. although the people from the CSE branch are very familiar with these things, but some of the people requested me to explain all these things in Java also. That's why I have taken these things again. And people from the EEE branch, so please have some concentration on these things. These are the basics of every programming language. So every programming language obviously will have data types, obviously will have control statements, operators, and command lines, precedence rules, and associativity, etc. So please listen, and let us start the things with the data types. So here, especially in Java programming language, or not in especially in Java, in C, C++, or Java, in any programming language other than Python, if we declare something as A, we have to say the compiler that A is going to store either integers, which means 0, 1, 2, etc., or the A is going to store something called as floating point numbers 2.5, 3.6, etc., or A is going to store characters A or character B or a character at the rate, etc., or A is going to store either true or false, we have to say the compiler what is this A, what this A is going to store. Either it is going to store 0, 1, 2, 3, or it is going to store something called as 1.5, 2.6, 3.6, or that A is going to store at the rate or hash symbols or characters, etc., or A is going to store either true or false. We have to say the compiler what this A is going to store. So here the data type will say the compiler what this A is going to store. If the data type, for example, it is variable A, and before variable A we are going to declare a data type, and that data type may be of the following types, right? The data type may be of the following types. If the data type is integer, see here, if the data type is integer, which means we are telling the compiler that A is a variable of integer type, and A is going to store the values such as -1, -2, or -0 or 1 or 2, anything without fractional part, right? So at the same time, if there is variable A, and in the part of data type I have declared something called as float, then which means the compiler will come to a conclusion that A is going to store something called as 3.5, 10.80, which means the things which contain some fractional part. So here the data type are used to intimate the compiler that the following variable is going to store certain values. So here in any programming language, these data types are divided into two categories: primitive data types, or we can call them as default data types, and the second type are non-primitive data types. We can call them as derived data types, default data types, and derived data types, right? So what the default data types are? The data types which directly comes along with the programming language, right? The data types which directly comes along with the programming language are called as default data types, right? So the data types which we create in the program are called as derived data types. So we will discuss the derived data types later. Now let us start the default data types. So in Java programming language, these primitive data types are divided into four categories: integers, floating point numbers, characters, and Boolean. These are the four categories of data types in Java. And again, integers are divided into four categories: byte, short, int, long, byte, short, int, long. And floating point are divided into float and double. Under character, we have only one data type, that is char. Under Boolean, we have one data type, Boolean. So here, byte means when we declare a variable, something called as byte A, means whenever the compiler executes this particular line, it is going to create a memory with the name A, where the size of A will be 1 byte. 1 byte means total it will have 8 bits. And similarly, when we declare a variable as short B, then compiler is going to create a memory, and the name of the memory will be B, and the size of the memory will be 2 bytes, which means 16 bits. And similarly, when we declare it as an something called as int B, then compiler is going to create a memory where the memory name is B, and the size of this memory will be 4 bytes, which means 32 bits. And when we declare it with a long, then it is going to create a memory with the name B, where the size of the memory will be 8 bytes, which means 64 bits. So this is how the memory allocation will be done, right? For a byte, it is going to create 1 byte. For a short, it is going to create 2 bytes. For a integer, it is going to create 4 bytes. For a long, it is going to create 8 bytes. So depending upon the type of value you want to store in the program, declare that variable with respected type. So if you want to store small values, define it as byte A, so it has some range. And if you want to store some big values, go for short. Even big, go for int. Even big, go for long, right? And at the same time, under the floating data type, there are two data types, that is float and double. Here float is if you declare a float variable, it will create a 4 bytes of memory, and if you declare a double variable, it will create 8 bytes of memory. And for characters in Java programming language, it is going to allocate 2 bytes. So if you define character A, whenever the compiler encounters this statement, it is going to create a memory location where the name of the memory location is A, and the size of the memory location will be 2 bytes. And inside this memory location, what we are going to store will be defined by this data type, right? And there is one more data type called as Boolean, where this Boolean data type, in Boolean data type, we can store either false or true. Other than these two, we cannot store anything else, right? And then coming to the non-primitive data types. So the things which we create in the programming language are called as non-primitive data types. Especially in Java programming language, classes, interfaces, arrays, strings, these all are non-primitive data types. So if you want to create an array, we have to use a data type followed by name of an array and followed by size of an array. So we are creating this array with the use of primitive data types, so it comes under non-primitive data types. So anything which is created inside the program with the usage of existing things is called as non-primitive data types. So in Java, classes, interfaces, arrays, and strings are the best examples of non-primitive data types. In C programming language, structures, unions, arrays are the best examples from non-primitive data types, right? Next one. Let us have a look at Java control statements. Here, the control statements are divided into 3 categories: selection statements, iterational statements, and jump statements. So under the selection statements, we have things such as if else, or nested if or if else ladder, switch case. Under the iterational statements, we have while, do while, for, and at the same time we can have nested while, nested do while, nested for. And the jump statements, we have break, continue, and return. So I'm going to explain about these control statements with the use of examples in the next class, right? So I hope everyone got understand the today's session. Just I am reviving the today's session. So in today's session, we have started with the super keyboard. So we have seen 3 uses of super keyboard. So how we can access the superclass variables, and how we can access the superclass methods, and how we can access the superclass constructors. And at the same time, after the discussing about super keywords, we have started discussing about data types. We have seen that the data types in Java or data types in any basic languages are of 2 types. primitive and non-primitive, or they can be called as default data types and derived data types. So under the primitive data types, we have seen that there are 4 categories: integers, floating point numbers, characters, and Boolean. And under the non-primitive data types, we have such as classes, interfaces, arrays, and strings. So under the primitive data types, under the integers, especially under integers, again, they are divided into 4 types: byte, short, int, long. For byte, it is going to allocate 2 bytes. For short, it is going to allocate 4. Sorry, for byte, it is going to allocate 1 byte. For short, it is going, compiler is going to allocate 2 bytes. And for integer, it is going to allocate 4 bytes. And for long, it is going to allocate 8 bytes. And coming to the floating point number, there are 2 data types under floating point number: float and double. So under the float, for float data type, compiler is going to allocate 4 bytes of memory. And for double data type, it is going to allocate 8 bytes of memory. And for character, compiler is going to allocate 2 bytes of memory. And for Boolean, it is going to allocate 1 bit of memory to store either true or false. Right? So in the next sessions, we are going to cover about something called as control statements, and with some examples. And then we are going to cover about operators and precedence, rules, and associativity. And finally, we are going to cover the comments. So I think everyone got understand today's session. And if you have doubts regarding this today's session, you can just post the comments in the comment box of this video in the YouTube channel. So I really thank each and every listener of this video for being here. And I'm going to take that